So good evening, everyone. Now we are going to...
Good evening.
Yeah. So we are starting today's webinar with a welcome note. I welcome all of you for this webinar, the first webinar of ELTAI's webinar series. And with us, we have 4 panelists to talk on to share their experience of teaching their students using certain methodologies. And I would now like to request our president, Dr. Sanjay Arora, to inaugurate the session with a few words. Sanjay,
good evening,
sir.
everyone. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. I welcome our panelists, Dr. Swati Paul, Dr. Ghazala Naz, Dr. Vinita Prasad, and Dr. Anupam Shukla, and our participants to the first webinar in the series of weekend webinars. It gives me immense pleasure to see the kind of enthusiasm and response that we have got to this webinar. I'm told that 60% of the participants in this webinar are non-ELTAI members. It is all the more important to tell you briefly about what ELTAI is, what it does, and how you can gain professionally by joining ELTAI. So I'll begin by talking about what ELTAI is. ELTAI is English Language Teachers Association of India, a teachers body which was established in the year 1974, 7th August to be precise, by late Padam Shri S. Natarajan. Even before the association started, we had the journal coming up right from 1965, the Journal of English Language Teaching, JELT. That's the acronym we use for it. The head office of ELTAI is in Chennai, and we have 50 chapters, more than 50 chapters now, which are spread all across the country from north to south, east to west. Office bearers of ELTAI are nominated. We do not have any elections because that leads to politicizing of the academic body, and that's the reason why till date we have not had any elections as such, and we have nominations. And this nomination is as per the input that we receive from various other leaders, chapter leaders, and participants and members who are actively working and who actually get into this kind of selfless academic service for a cause. ELTAI works with the objective of providing teachers a forum, and it also provides development programs, provides consultancy, imparts new knowledge in ELT, and we have just not confined it to ELT now. We also have 6 special interest groups, 3 of these, which I'll be just briefly mentioning. We also promote research and experimentation, and professional views are also encouraged. Our membership is, annual membership is 400, short-term membership is 1,000, and long-term membership is 3,000. We've done away with the donor membership because of certain issues that kept coming up. Now, coming on to what ELTAI does. ELTAI comes up with a journal. I was mentioning about it, which started way back in 1965. And that's the only journal which is the most regular bi-monthly journal, which is peer-reviewed and UGC website, list of journals. Professor Ramni is the editor of the journal. We also have a newsletter which comes up with all the activities that each chapter keeps on doing, workshops, seminars, conferences, and it keeps on reporting all these things on a quarterly basis. How can you gain by joining ELTAI? Because this is a question which I am repeatedly asked by most of the people who intend to join ELTAI, because uh, no one joins without a cause. Very few join without a cause. We have sponsorship for e-courses. The bi-monthly journal comes free, or rather, we can say that it is included in the cost of the membership. We have a free subscription of the e-journal as well. Then we also have these special interest groups. We have business English, SIG, we have the SIG, and the computer technology SIG. Then we also have possibility of getting our articles published in our journal, subsidized subscription of ITFL, and also TESOL USA. We have just recently gone in for memorandum of understanding with various teacher bodies in Asia: Bangladesh, Malaysia, Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand, Korea, Hong Kong, and also Canada. Every year we have an annual conference, and this year also we had one in GLA University, Matra, which we have now postponed because of the present pandemic situation.
Check the room.
Then we also, ELTAI also provides professional development opportunities through these e-journals, and also provides professional support through seminars, workshops, through our resource persons. We have seasoned people who have put in decades of service, and their views, their opinions, their ideas are how ELTAI and help our members through. We also provide useful links, teachers, students, and also practice material. Just recently, we also started with the consultancy services, and that is also something which is quite important, and most of the people are taking benefit out of it. We also just recently had a meeting with the CBSE joint director, and we are into some kind of understanding with CBSE. Presently, we have started with this webinar series of panel discussion, live streaming, and then we have professors, experts from different fields. We have today literary luminaries who have put in years of service. And before I conclude, I would like to also announce the two webinars that we have over the next weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Our Saturday webinar is on the topic delving into the process of writing, which will be coordinated by Dr. Nilima Sharma, who's Vice President of Trinity College London. And we have 5 CBSE school teachers who will be participating here. And on 10th May, we have this webinar on English in engineering colleges, syllabus, delivery, and outcome. It will be coordinated by Dr. Shaila Mahan, and we have 3 participants there: Professor Nubu Tandon from MNIT, Dr. Pushplata from BITS Pilani, and Dr. Usha Kanungo from LNMIT. So that is just briefly what we have been doing, what you can gain through joining ELTAI. And those of you who are members, we hope that you continue to take advantage of ELTAI and what ELTAI provides. And please support us for our cause. So with this, I just end it and I pass it on to Xavier's. I welcome you all, and I declare the webinar series open. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So as we have already announced, today's webinar will be Teacher's Tale. We will share 4 different tales from 4 different teachers. They will share stories of their best lesson, how they taught it, and what change they saw in the classroom and what level of students. They will discuss all those things. With us, we have 4 panelists: Dr. Swati Paul, and then Dr. Ghazala Nas, Professor Vinita Prasad, and Professor Anupam Sukla. Now I first request Dr. Swati Paul to share her experience. Dr. Swati Paul is the principal of Janaki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University. She has been a Charles Wallace Scholar and also the first Asian to receive the John McGrath Theatre Studies Scholar at Edinburgh University. She is also the Vice President of the Indian Association for Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies and an executive body member of the Indian Association for the Study of Australia. Dr. Swati Paul is the author of several books on theatre, creative, and academic writing. She also writes poetry. Dr. Paul has presented a number of papers at both national and international conferences and has been the recipient of several awards. Her newspaper articles articulate her views on education and her research in drama. Over to you, ma'am. We welcome you to present your experiences.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really good to actually virtually see people hale and hearty on this platform here today. I'd like to begin by thanking ELTI for organizing such a webinar on a topic as relevant as successful pedagogical practices, and also, of course, for giving me an opportunity to present at this webinar. I teach in and am principal of an all-women's Delhi University college, where a large number of students are at the most second-generation college goers. Many come from extremely underprivileged backgrounds. I mention these because all these factors have some bearing on the way that we adopt certain pedagogical practices, as you will see. Though my specialization is drama and performance studies, I teach all three genres, as well as academic and creative writing. Now, before I narrate the pedagogical practice that has stood my students and me in good stead, I would like to make an observation. I have observed that by and large, students are taught drama at school in much the same way as they're taught a novel. That is, they're taught to look at character, plot, language, themes, and so on. As a result of this, the uniqueness of drama as a performative genre is somehow lost. Now, as an English person, for me, this loss is immeasurable. And personally, it has been and continues to be my endeavor to rectify this error, as also to show to students how a poem or a novel can have performance potential. That a play is comprised of the primary text, which is the direct communication among characters through dialogues, and the secondary text that includes stage directions. But it is a sad fact that more often than not, students do not understand the significance of stage directions simply because they have not been trained to see how important these are. Three dramatic texts that are generally taught to students of third year English honors. I'd request you, Xavier, to please share screen with the PowerPoint. Thank you. Right. So the three texts that I've taught to students of third year English honors as a part of their modern European drama course or their modernism paper are Ibsen's Ghosts, Beckett's Waiting for Godot, and Brecht's The Good Person of Chelsea. Now, if we look at the first act of Ibsen's Ghosts, slide please. Slide please.
Yes, ma'am, I've changed.
Three quick observations that I always make to my students. Once again, slide please. Next slide, Xavier.
Yes, ma'am, I've changed.
One, detailed stage direction. This prepares them to understand the whole aspect of realism in theater and what realistic stage settings look like. The next is the creation of an environment by the use of such words as gloomy for the fjord landscape, as Ibsen did in these stage directions. And the third is the authorial voice in intervening to create such an ambience, which in this instance is a bleak one. Now let's have a quick glance at Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
And if you've had a quick look at the next slide, which is the first scene of Brecht's The Good Person of Chezwa. Could you have the next slide, please?
Yes, ma'am.
The next slide. No, we skipped a slide. We skipped a slide. The previous slide, please.
Is this
Yeah,
the one?
thank you. You will have noticed, yes, that's the right one. You will have noticed that the stage directions in both these are minimalistic, implying perhaps that there could be any context, any space and time for their staging. Now, from the stage directions itself, we realize that their purpose is quite different from Ibsen's effort to create realistic theater. I have found this comparative pointing out of dramatic conventions between texts extremely useful. A simple aspect like carefully looking at stage directions can trigger a more detailed discussion on so many aspects, especially the kind of theater being practiced by the playwright. It has always worked in making students understand that drama has its own specificities as a genre and that each play has its own context and therefore its own requirements. I have spoken about this as a general pedagogical practice that I follow when I teach a dramatic text to my students, and it has always worked. Now, I'd like to briefly narrate an anecdote. My college decided in the year 2012 to perform Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. It was to be a public performance. The members of Team MSND, as we called ourselves, were very excited, and we began auditions for a huge number of students. My college has about 3,000 plus students. Very soon, the entire process seemed quite a nightmare rather than a dream, because students could barely understand the language of the bard. And here I must point out that for many students of our college, English is definitely not the language they speak or think or read in, leave alone dream in. So the question of emoting just didn't happen. I had
Hello, ma'am. We are not able to hear you.
that they wanted a meteor role. Such questions and such despair completely rocked my boat. And then I noticed something in the workshops being conducted by the director Kuljit Singh of Atelier Theatre. He asked the actors to translate a small portion into their mother tongue and then emote it in that tongue. The difference was phenomenal. We broke up literally each scene in this manner, and it was fantastic to hear the same lines being spoken in Bengali, Malayalam, Hindi, Punjabi, Assamese, and English. The same actors who had been speaking in the most wooden way and didn't seem to feel a thing were suddenly completely transformed, and one could feel every bit of what they were trying to get across. Slide, please. Can we have the next slide?
Okay.
So the rest, as they say, is history, and the students performed to packed houses with each actor completely within the character that she was playing. It was then more than ever before that I realized what a powerful tool translation is in teaching. I do translations myself and often translate for students who have studied English only till class 8. They are called C-stream students in Delhi University, to help them to comprehend. Slide, please. The next slide. So through translation, Xavier, if you could just put on the next slide, thank you. the students put the text in their own context, and through a process of identification and familiarization, they were able to internalize the text. Not only did they learn about text and context, they were also able to overcome the challenges of the bard's English. Now, some people may question this universalizing of Shakespeare, and perhaps this could be the subject of a debate later. But as a teacher, my objective had been successfully achieved in what went on to become a short play in itself called Rehearsing the Dream, which won awards at the annual Intercollege Shakespeare Festival in 2013. You can actually catch the video of this on the Institute of Lifelong Learning portal. The success of this enterprise then spurred me on to get my modern European drama students to try out the same things, and they have, over the last few years, been adapting plays like Ghosts to more current situations. Could I have the last slide, please?
Yes.
So, for example, if Oswald Alving in Ibsen's Ghosts had syphilis, the Oswald of my students had AIDS, or in one instance, even erectile dysfunction. If Ibsen's Ghosts had incest as a theme, the ghost production by my students had homosexuality. Or if euthanasia is foregrounded by Ibsen, my students brought up terrorism. This contemporarizing or adaptation of the text helps them to understand the whole notion of realism and the fact that realism is contextual and historical. One person's reality is different from another's. It helps them to negotiate with Ibsen's ghosts as well as the ghosts that dog their own reality. So it's been a hugely successful pedagogical practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And you beautifully explained how you used performance and translation as a method to help your students to understand text like Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream and Ibsen's Ghost. And it was you clearly explained and you also showed us the outcomes through pictures, and then you explained how your students changed themes and how they got appreciation from the audience. Now I'd like to request the second speaker, Dr. Ghazala Nas. She is the head of the Department of English at Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Greater Noida, since 2009. She earned her PhD from Patna University in 1996 and started teaching in Patna Women's College in 1986. She played a crucial role in setting up the Communicative English with Media Studies section in that college. She then joined the Department of English at Patna University in 2003. She joined Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology in 2008 as professor and now continues there as the head of the department. She will share her experience of teaching phonetics to the undergraduate students of professional courses using audio visuals from the cinema. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep Singh.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be addressing you this way, and I would like to thank ELTAI for this opportunity, especially Dr. Shravan Kumar for having roped me in. It's a pleasure. In my experience of over 35 years teaching undergrad and postgraduate classes of myriad places, various subjects, when I was called upon to think of a best class, I thought I would pick up one of the classes that I have been was asked to take when I joined a professional university here in Greater Noida. The problem with teaching, the syllabus had phonetics. Now here, I want to share with you some very simple pedagogical issues. They were challenges. This is a class of about 50, 60 students. And these students are largely from backgrounds which they come from schools which are Hindi medium. So English is a little bit of a challenge for them. Heavy regional accents. Then for a subject like phonetics, there is lack of motivation for students of engineering because they're not opted to become linguists or students of English language. So why phonetics? So I have to, that is a challenge. Then too little time, the constraints of time, and the question paper, which is very theoretical. They have to pass an exam, which is very theoretical, with questions like what is phonetics. So under all these constraints, how do I teach phonetics? That was the question. Now this is a pedagogical practice that I talk about. I have learned to be reflective. Before a class, especially a new challenge, I think of the larger picture. Now, what was the larger picture here? All these constraints were there and the goals were there. But the larger objective was that these students become better speakers of English, that they become more intelligible, that they work towards getting a neutral accent. And then the second reflection is like for everybody else, how can the class be made interesting, more interactive, simpler for them to understand, because they have no idea what phonetics is all about. Now, the usual style that I had come across was, teachers coming in with PPTs, etc., throwing questions like, what is phonetics? And then coming up with all the sounds of English language and how many, and what's a consonant sound and what's a vowel sound. Instead of all that, and this becomes interesting because Dr. Swati Paul was just talking of drama. And here is a total different use of drama. So it struck me and I thought I'm going to use a drama that was based on phonetics. Shakespeare, this is Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, and use it here to teach phonetics. Now, in the classroom, I started by introducing the story because that again is a challenge. The language is a challenge, so story. So very briefly, I gave them the story of, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but it is a delightful play. And if you haven't watched the movie adaptation, it's a musical from the 60s, you should. It's called My Fair Lady. So I showed them, I had downloaded video clips. Not the whole movie couldn't be shown because it's a long one and we had our time constraints. So small video clips of things like, I gave them the background that here is a professor of phonetics. The challenge is that he's picked up a girl from the streets of London, a flower girl, and he's trying to make her into a lady just by changing the way she speaks. And this challenge, and he's taken the challenge, and whether she does it or not, you have to find out. All right. Now there were phonetic exercises or drills in the movie. So some of which I picked up to show to the students. Those were the scripts. And they're, not only are they interesting, they give the students an idea that this is not easy. You have to unlearn the way you speak, so many things, and pick up the correct way of saying it. For instance, this heroine, Eliza Doolittle, has a very strong Cockney accent. And she says The rhine in spine stays mildly in the plane. So, and Higgins goes on and on and on till she gets it. The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Or the dropping of H in Hereford, and Hampshire. Hurricanes hardly ever. So she says, ever happen. The rest, she drops the H. So all that. So the whole class, we see these clips and they're all guided. And then after it is over, I divided the class like I usually do, for these things. And most of you must be practicing that into groups and gave them a few questions like, does pronunciation or how we speak really affect our prospects in life? Or another question, what kind of problems do I face when I speak English? And they have their discussions. And then I call one representative from each group to present what they have been discussing. And then when finally, I have the class back in my hand. So I find that this was a system which really enthused them. And they wanted to learn phonetics. They were, very curious. And I talk, then at the end of the class, of course, one has to talk, And I remember always King Lear's lines that mend your speech a little, lest it mar your fortune.
साहब से बात करो, साहब से बात करो.
So told them, now, this is the main, the thrust of the lesson. While one is doing that, something that also is very important, I feel, when I'm teaching English language, that the culture has to be imbibed, a little of the culture, familiarity with the culture, the inherent politeness of the language. Now, again, when Professor Higgins is teaching, so he teaches, how kind of you to let me come. How kind of you. So along with the rhythm and intonation, there's that word kind. How kind of you. The please, the thank yous. So the politeness. Then there is the appearance and the poise, which is also important. So she speaks very good language, but then some attention has to be paid to the way she, presents herself and her appearance. So all that is there. And to conclude, how much time do I have? Do I have a minute to?
If you conclude, it would be better,
Dr.
ma'am.
Singh?
We don't have much time. If
All
you
right.
conclude, that
So
would be better.
I will conclude then.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have read out a very nice quote from the play, but that's okay. So in conclusion, the pedagogical practices that I have been emphasizing on is reflecting. I've learned that before every class, what is actually important? What is the larger picture, the larger objective? Then the methodology or the strategy that I'm going to apply for maximum learner participation. How can I break the monotony of the classroom? So in the end, what I would say is for all of you to carry away from my experience is that there are two elements that are very, very important for a teacher. And those are enthusiasm, lot of energy, and empathy. So that is the essence of what I've been what I've learned, and I would like to share with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful presentation. You clearly explained how you used clippings from the movie Pygmalion, and you made your students to discuss in groups, and then thereby you also sensitized them to the intricacies of pronunciation, accent, and all the other aspects related to speaking. And then the takeaway, I really liked how you wound up your speech with the two takeaways for teachers: enthusiasm and empathy. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have the next panelist, Professor Vinita Prasad. Dr. Vinita Prasad is the professor and head of the institution at Amity Institute of English Studies and Research. She teaches both English literature and communication skills to the undergraduate and postgraduate students. An educationist, Dr. Prasad brings to the table over 29 years of teaching, training, and mentoring experience. She has guided research, and 3 PhD scholars are currently working under her supervision. She is a keen writer, and her articles were published regularly in the Hindustan Times. Dr. Prasad is a people's person, and that is her greatest strength. She has the rare knack of infusing confidence in her students, making them ready to take on the world. Over to you, ma'am. She will be talking about how she taught scansion to a class of undergraduate students and how she made it easy for her students. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Singh. And I think I must start with thanking ELTAI for having given me this wonderful opportunity. And thanks also to my colleague, Dr. Shravan Kumar, because of whom I'm here. It was really, really good listening to Dr. Swati Paul and Dr. Ghazala Naz. Both of them shed very interesting light on their respective topics. For dearth of time, I will not go further into their topics, but talk about my own little experience. And as Dr. Naz said, it is not easy to try and identify one example or one particular topic from the plethora of topics that we teach. But when I went down memory lane and I was trying to remember, I did remember how scansion, which was considered, and in that particular class of undergraduate students, it was not a part of their syllabus. So I remember I was teaching a particular poem to them, and I suddenly said, isn't the rhythm, isn't the rhythmic beat so beautiful, and you can count the feet in each of the lines? And they looked up at me quite blankly. To which I asked, didn't they know scansion? Had they not done it? And they said no. So then I said, okay, this is something. I split them into groups of 4. So the pedagogical approach, you could say, was cooperative learning or group learning, because personally, I have always found it the best way of teaching and eliciting responses, whether it is communicative English or whether it is literature or language. When they work together in groups, then that shyness or that inhibition of coming up with an answer, because otherwise the fear of going wrong always inhibits a student. So what I did was very simple, and maybe it will appear a little, like I said, simplistic to my audiences. But the point I was trying to make was, how do we go about seeing the beauty of this beautiful language, English, and the rhythm that was packed in by our great poets? So typically, I take the example, and I am going to take the example here also of William Wordsworth, who else but the great romantic. And I took the daffodils to teach them what scansion was all about. So I wrote down the first 4 lines on the whiteboard. And then I said, look here, there are essentially 3 or 4 steps. Step 1 is to break down every word into its constituent syllables. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. And it becomes very interesting when they come back with whether it's monosyllabic or golden, some will say 2, some will say 3, or daffodils. So essentially, some time is spent in figuring out and telling the class, and I make sure it's a very democratic process. It's not like I tell them that golden has only 2 syllables full stop. No, what I did was I tried to help them arrive at it, because thankfully they all knew what syllables were, because they needed to know that the syllables by these brilliant poets were exquisitely well balanced. So first thing we did was we counted the number of syllables per line. And once the whole class was on the same page, and it's again, as I said, the underlying principle is the word simple. We underlined each of the syllables. And I would encourage them, and that I do always, is to mark the beat on the desks. The way I was reading it out just now, I wandered lonely. So each time, so I wandered lonely as a cloud. and thereby I put the accents. First, the accents that floats on high or vales and hills. Again, explaining how the V is poetic license. So the word over, which has two syllables, becomes monosyllabic. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Very important, therefore, to have established that daffodils has three syllables. That's why I said that we take our own sweet time determining the number of syllables. And the accents are duly marked. By this time, I invite students to come up to the board, because once I've done the first line, they gain in confidence. And that is where that group learning comes to their aid. So that done, the accented syllables have been marked. Then we say, okay, will one of you come and mark the unaccented ones? So that, of course, is a cakewalk. They come and they mark the unaccented syllables in the 4 lines. And just when they think that they are done, that's when I tell them, or I told them in my first class, no, now it is the time to mark the feet. So, wandered lonely as a cloud, thereon, so on and so forth, till we arrived at the last line. When all at once I saw a host of golden daffodils. And then they see the unaccented and the accented and the foot complete. Then it's simple math. How many can you count? 1, 2, 3, 4. They all remember their geometry, so they know about the diameter, the trimeter, the tetrameter. And then the moment of enlightenment, that this is unstressed, stressed, and therefore iambic. So at the bottom I write conclusion. These lines are in iambic tetrameter, and the entire class, averaging at 55-60, nods its head in unison and in agreement. Post that, I take another stanza from any poem, or I ask them if they want to clean the board, write another 4 lines, and this time we invite a group to come forward and try and do the scansion. So this works wonderfully well. And I've seen that comprehension is easy. You can see it by looking. I mean, all of us teachers know that whatever we teach, we are able to see how it's being taken, how it is being received, and how well it is registered. So then they know and they understand the music of this beautiful language, the rhythm, and how well balanced all the poets were in the way they wrote. So I don't know if my time is, I think it's 6 minutes. So Dr. Singh, you tell me, you want, I can speak for another minute, but I simply wanted to share how scansion works and how very effectively it is explained to students.
We need to accommodate one more speaker, ma'am.
Yes, so I am done, like I told you already.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So in your,
thank you.
You shared your experience very beautifully, and I'm very, very much amazed by the way you taught scansion to your students to make them understand how to scan the lines of Wordsworth's poetry to understand its rhythm. So thank you so much. We have the third last panelist with us, Dr. Anupam Shukla. Dr. Anupam Shukla is heading the Department of English at DAV College, Kanpur. He has had opportunities to interact with Ms. Barbara Hardy, a British scholar and professor of University of London, Professor Jayant Mahabatra, a noted Indian English poet and Sahitya Academy Award winner, and Professor Adam Klein, a noted American novelist. He was also a part of the Unified Syllabus Committee of English to be implemented from the coming session from 2020 to 2021. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Singh.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Now, sharing 2 experiences as an English teacher and as a student of English, which really unnerved me, was at the very first class that I took as a lecturer in a degree college in Dhar way back in 1983. I was teaching a lesson. Naturally, English, some essay was there, some story was there. And the children, Dhar is a tribal district. That must be kept in mind. So I was a fresh from Christchurch, that too in English, having little experience of interacting with the class. But then I joined my class the very first day I was teaching, and there was a word, tide. So I explained to them in English, and later on, something went in my mind straight away. I should ask them whether they know what is tide. So I definitely, I came back and I asked, do you know what is tide? How many of you have seen sea? How many of you have been to seashore? So they say, sir, no, we have not been there. Fine. What is the meaning of tide? So one boy raised his hand. He said, sir, I know. I said, what? He said, sir, गांव में जो खेत में ज्वार भाटा आता है, half he was correct. Jwar, that's correct. Tide, that's the Hindi equivalent. And then bhata was, that grows in the. I was shocked that this is the state of affair. So one lesson that I got from there was that you have to come to the level of your students. This is the first lesson as a teacher, and I got at the very first day of starting my career in 1983. After 10, 15 years in Kanpur itself, I was teaching John Galsworthy's Justice. So normally when I take a class, I first of all try to assess the ability of the student to follow, how much of English they can follow. Otherwise, I also be a little bilingual, so that whatever goes in 45 minutes, if 30 minutes is also transmitted to children, that's fine, I believe, as a teacher, because we normally have students from the lower strata of the society. They are not English medium students. Dr. Swati Paul, Dr. Ghazala, and Dr. Vinita are very fortunate that they have students who can understand English better. But we don't have. So at one day there was a dialogue of Calder, and I simply said, you note the irony over here. This is BA Part 3 class. In Part 2, we already teach them all these technical terminology. We teach them literary terminology in Part 2. In Part 3, so I asked one of the boys, what do you mean by irony? I was shocked. He simply showed his elbows, iron man. So now, when it comes of teaching English, it becomes like that if you don't come to the level of the students, whether it is at the pedagogical level or at the narrative level or at the literary level, you force children to go to the bazaar notes which are available in plenty in the market. So my belief is that we should, as a teacher, should first assess the ability and capacity of the student to understand whatever is being taught in the language which they understand, so that the purpose is not defeated as a teacher. This is what the two things which happened to me, and they were a big learners also for me as a teacher, that what should I do when I enter the classroom. Now coming back, as I told you that my topic today would be Wordsworth, and I would rather talk about the pandemic and poetry, nature poetry in particular. What have you been seeing? All of us must have realized the soothing effect of this lockout on one hand. Definitely, those who are suffering may not feel like that. But certainly, I do feel that lockout has given us so much time to ponder and to see also what nature can do to us. Right from 5 a.m. in the morning till 6:30 or 7 o'clock till the sunset, you can hear the beautiful sounds of the birds chirping. Not only one kind of bird, plenty of birds are chirping today. Why are they doing this? Why we are talking today of nature? I go back to the main argument of mine that when Madam Vinita talked about the scansion, the technical aspect of daffodils. What is daffodils? Daffodils, William Wordsworth. Today we are talking of eco-literature. What is eco-literature? Where do we stand? What are we doing? By branding, he simply, in simple terms, in the language of the town, in the language of the common man, if he calls them love nature, let nature be your teacher. Today we have eco-criticism. The theorists have given a new pattern to it. But it's a new packaging that I believe that has been given by the theorist. And to begin with, Cheryl Glott-Felty was the first who enumerated on it, who branded it. And later on, Terry Guilford and all those things, all those theorists also established it. So we look to Wordsworth today. We look to nature poetry today. The bonding between man and nature, that bonding was missing. Maybe because of the vikas and vinas that go simultaneously. What has happened? Why do we not wander among as lonely as a cloud? Today you are lonely as a cloud. The whole theory of Wordsworth poetry, spontaneous overflow, powerful feelings. If we take up just two poems of Wordsworth, the Daffodils and the Solitary Reaper, the entire poetry, right from BA Part 1 to MA Final to MPhil and to PhD also, doing your research, these two poems are enough to go through the entire lyrical ballads. Instead of not going into lyrical ballads, if you talk about these two poems as a whole, you find all those elements which Wordsworth has discussed in lyrical ballads are found here. What is that bonding which he's talking about? You see, there is a reverse personification. If we see in the daffodils, it is humans to cloud and then daffodils to human. What it has done, it has simply brought people closer to nature. Today, we are talking about those days which we have almost forgotten. We were oblivious about them. Nature. Let nature be your teacher. In Indian context, if I say, we worship nature in several forms. Was it unscientific? This is the first question that I get. Today we are going back to same old technique, to old living. And our children ought to understand the blessings of nature. Whatever is free in this world is given by nature, not by man. If this is understood by children in the classroom, then I think half of the problems of this world will be over. I don't want to go by stanza wise into this poem, but definitely the historical perspective to this poem is very necessary. If you go through what Wordsworth had undergone, it was 19th century. He belonged to a lake district, a place which was full of natural boom. Just a little more anecdote. We must have heard the name of Sumitra Nandan Pant, Hindi Chayavadi Kavi, nature poet. He also, when I visited Kausani, district Nainital district
Yes, sir.
Ranke, I went to the place place where he used to live, and he
Okay.
was impressed. His house. Then on the left, there was a deep forest.
Okay.
And in the
There
middle
are
where he
no
used to
questions
sit
posted by
and see and admire nature. That was the place he ought to be. Nature can teach you so many things beyond getting spoiled on rest of the things. I hope I am not short of time.
It would be
Hello?
better if you conclude, sir. We are actually running short of time now.
Okay. Give me a half a second,
Okay,
if you
sir.
don't mind.
Okay.
So, Solitary Reaper is one poem which rekindles in my ears every time I read. I find a new meaning to it. And to end with it, I would like to end with a couplet. एक बार उसने, please refer to the last lines of Wordsworth. एक बार उसने मुझको शोखी से पुकारा था, एक बार उसने मुझको शोखी से पुकारा था, बजती रही शहनाइयां बरसों मेरे कानों में. So this is what the Solitary Reaper is. In the last rhyme, and as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. So that is what nature can teach us. Nature can create new environment for us. And today, under the circumstances, present circumstances, I think we must return to Rousseau's call of return to nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for explaining how nature studies can be relevant in language classes and the pedagogical approach that you have adopted for teaching poetry in your class. Thank you so much. Now we have got some time left for questions from the participants. If you have any questions, we can post it in the chat box. On your behalf, I can ask the panelists. We have already received 2 questions. Both of them are from Dr. Sanjay Arora. The first question is to Dr. Nas. So he has thanked you. His question is, don't you think that to improve the pronunciation of students coming from Hindi medium, regular correction is required?
More than corrections, we need oral drills. Give them the correct way. And there are 4 or 5, consonant sounds, a couple of that Hindi speakers make, they have trouble with. So concentrate on that and a lot of oral drill in it. That's the only way we can do it. Instead of pointing out and correcting, that may make them more, the inhibitions and shyness is already there. So that might, create problems for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the next question from Dr. Sanjay Arora to Professor Vinita Prasad. So his question is, teaching students about syllables and feet is quite challenging. How could your students divide the words into syllables and feet?
Okay, thank you for your question, Dr. Arora. See, syllables, we really have to go down to the basics, back to the basics. And my simple way of telling them is the number of syllables. We know what a syllable is, the smallest unit of sound, the smallest unit of sound that a word can be broken into. I tell them to start with their own names. I say, though our names are not English words, our names do have syllables. So, Vinita, for example. And then I say the number of times you open and shut your mouth to pronounce a word is the number of syllables. So Vinita, we open and we shut. After that, it is easy because we know that syllables are always around a vowel sound. So that is where they have to look. A syllable, it is essential. A syllable must have a vowel sound. It need not have a consonant sound. We know that. We also know that a syllable by itself, a vowel by itself can be a syllable. About. So if they do not know syllables, we first have to give them 4 or 5 examples. That here is a word. So golden. Go, the O sound, and then the A sound. Those are the 2 sounds. The consonants around them constitute and they become 2 syllables. So smallest unit of sound, count them by the number of times you open and shut your mouth, as well as following that little rhythm on your table, a kind of a beat, because we know English is a 4-beat language. That is the way and it is very successful. Students never have any doubts about their understanding of what syllables are. Then we talk about syllable stress. And then, of course, comes scansion.
Okay. So we have another question from V. Surya. I suppose this question is to Dr. Nas because it is something related to pronunciation. Is there any other effective method to improve pronunciation of engineering students other than the oral drills?
Oh, thank you. Interesting question. And there are many ways to do it. The number one way would be make them speak. We have, why the problem here is that they're so shy to hear themselves. So if it is possible, get a mic, get them talking in class, record. They can do it on their phones now. I use it extensively in the class, make them record on their own phones and then listen to it. We, of course, have a language lab where they practice a lot, but more than that, even if you don't have a lab, this can listening to a lot of good English being spoken and then trying to copy that and speak. So speaking is very important. Once you start to speak, little and they listen carefully. When they listen carefully, you guide them, and they start getting it. So.
Okay. And another question to you again, ma'am. A question from Kamala
Yes.
Devi. Can you suggest some other work apart from Pygmalion to teach phonetics?
Oh, you can pick up any movie, but simple ones with subtitles and different from like an English or British accent, Indian movies with Indian accents, clips from there, speak, from YouTube, download that and then show it in class. There are so many, you just have to think. It's all around you. You can think, come up with new devices and make your class interesting. It's so nice to see that all of you are so very enthusiastic about this. Thank you so much for the questions.
And another question from Pratima Malwatkar. His question is how to get rid of the Hindi speakers' problem with is sound and ish sound.
Which sound?
Sound is.
Sir and sure. Sir and sure.
Oh, okay. So, this is again a little bit, this goes, actually, if you have a background, the teacher should have a little bit of background in phonetics. We should know how a particular sound is articulated, from where, what is the manner of articulation. Then you can teach them, that this is where the tip of the tongue should be, and this is how you go. For example, shh, how do you do that? And now take out the hissing sound of a snake. So there is a difference. Can you see that? So make them first, they have to, understand that there is a difference. Then they orally practice to get that difference when they're speaking. So not very difficult to do, but a little bit of phonetic background for the teacher is essential in teaching pronunciation. All that should not be given to the students. The terminology of what is a phoneme, what's an allophone, what's, all that is not required. The teacher should know, like we do, for example, in teaching morphology, grammar. The required structure is there in our brains as teachers, but we don't have to tell them all the rules of the grammar. Students pick it up as they speak. No, I'm not talking of students of English language. I'm talking of professional students from all the other, professional courses, etc.
Okay.
So,
and if I may just add to that, Dr. Naz, there's one very effective way of teaching sir and sure is tongue twisters. The very popular one being
seashells
on the seashore.
I know.
Anyone who masters that, has mastered it. She sells seashells on the seashore.
That is, thank you. Yeah, that is true. That is true. The tongue twisters are there.
Yes.
And the last question is to Dr. Swati Paul. And how to teach Shakespearean drama to the students who don't correspond with the English culture if they are unable to understand because of the cultural difference. This question is from Jabba Singh. How to teach Shakespearean drama?
That was the entire... Right. That was the entire purpose of my presentation, in fact, where I said that, one of the things that we can do to the students, which is what we did with Midsummer Night's Dream, is to give them the text and then explain the context to them and ask them if they can perhaps locate a similar situation in their own locatedness within the country, within the region, and then to try and get a similar feeling through their mother tongue. It works very well. If you just try it out, if you just try that out, it's a matter of contextualizing. You've got to get the students to understand that every text has a context, but that the context can be stretched. So you've got to point it out. After all, now we've got, if you look at Shakespeare, look at the number of versions of Shakespeare that we have in India. We've got Shakespeare in Hindi. We've got from Haidar to Makbul. Name the films. Look at the Bollywood films that are based on Shakespeare. If you look at Bengali cinema, you look at any cinema. I mean, Shakespeare is perhaps the most borrowed, playwright. So how have they managed to do it? How have these directors managed to do it? It's because they've contextualized Shakespeare. And that is what we also as teachers need to do. So good idea, of course, would be to show them some of these Bollywood films and, give them an idea as to how to go about it. That really helps.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll wind up with one more question. This question is to Dr. Vinita Prasad. So the question is from Dr. Vaibhav. He has asked, the students in rural and tribal area have different problems altogether. How can we make them comfortable as far as phonetics is concerned?
This question, is it for me or is it for Dr. Naz?
It is for you, ma'am, to Dr. Vinita Prasad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can we make students in the rural areas more comfortable?
Yes, exactly.
See, each time we come back to phonetics, we come back to pronunciation. And the idea behind becoming more comfortable is speaking. The only way to get better at a language, and I know that in the rural areas it is quite difficult. It's it's a tall order. But first they will have to start speaking. Only then will they figure out, or people around them will figure out, what the challenges in pronunciation are, and those can gently be then corrected through drills and exercise and things. But the first step is to overcome the inhibition. It is mostly the inhibition that prevents them from speaking. They feel very conscious of going wrong, of other people making fun and laughing, which happens a lot of times. Even if I don't speak English well, I'll be the first to laugh at somebody else. See, that's human nature. So the idea is to try and instill confidence and to ask them and stimulate them to speak, especially amongst the peer group, to get into the habit of speaking as much as possible. That's the only thing that I can say, and that is the first step forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to all the panelists. We had a nice time talking to all of you, and we also had very interactive participants who asked several questions on phonetics and drama and all the other teaching methodologies. And I have a few information for the audience, the participants. Two pieces of information. The first one is we have shared a link to the feedback form in the chat box. I'm sharing it now again. Please fill up the form. We'll also try to send it by email also. You can give feedback about this webinar. And many of you have raised concern about certificates. It is going to be a series of webinars. So in a month, we will conduct webinars every weekend, or on Saturdays and Sundays. If you attend 75% of sessions in the series, you will get certificates. You must register using the Google form, and you must attend 75% of the sessions. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, ma'am and sir. Thank you.